Political analyst Wendy Patrick, Laura Fink, they join us with more. Ladies, good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Shelley.
People are still talking about all those very large, massive marches happening all across the nation, really across the world. What was the impact of that, Laura?
The largest march in the history of our country took place last Saturday, and all to support women's rights and to protest Donald Trump's potential incursion into them. This was a statement that unsettled President Trump just after he had been inaugurated. These marches were unprecedented in their size, in their scope. We saw them across the country. We saw 50,000 people marching here. What's remarkable to me is the energy behind it, the size, and also the fact that they drew from only 50% of the population. There were some guys there, but they were largely comprised of women. That is a huge movement protesting against the policies that Donald Trump hopes to enact.
Wendy, does Donald Trump want to undo Roe versus Wade? And if he specifically is not trying to undo that historic Supreme Court decision from 1973 allowing for abortions legally, is he going to appoint someone to replace Justice Antonin Scalia with someone on the bench who does?
Well, let's say the answers are, I don't want to say yes and yes. The answer to the second question is yes, but one of the things that Trump has said is he wants the decision to be left to the states. And when you tying that into what we've seen, boy, Americans have been getting their steps over this last week with all the marching that we've been doing. The rally, the march today is also supposed to be record-breaking. When it comes to crowds, size matters, and that's what's being covered from coast to coast, not only during last Saturday's unprecedented crowd-sized marches, but also today. Remember, at 8:45 our time is going to be the March for Life, and that supposedly is going to break record numbers as well. And it's both of these are no doubt going to be, they're the kind of issues that are being discussed in the big announcement Trump's going to make next week when he announces, as you mentioned, Chris, the new nominee for the Supreme Court.
You're talking about the march. Wendy, actually, we're taking a live look from Washington, D.C. now. That March for Life are already getting underway, and Vice President Mike Pence will be speaking there. So you think these marches are effective?
I think they are. And remember all of the news cycle was actually devoted for almost a whole 24-hour period to the size of the inauguration crowds. So that's why I say size matters when it comes to crowds. Who is coming out and why does it matter? Why does it matter how many Americans are mobilized one way or another? For all the talk we make about how everybody interacts on social media, an awful lot of Americans are taking to the streets.
So much has happened in 1 week. Let's go to the border issue right now. Donald Trump campaigned on this issue. He said that he was going to build the wall and have Mexico pay for it. Laura, where do we stand now?
Well, it looks like we're going to pay for it. We're going to pay for it because he's going to put a tariff on Mexican goods, which is otherwise known as a tax, which means you and I are going to pay those dollars to fund that wall. I think as a binational region here in San Diego, we have direct things to fear. When you constrain our border, you constrain our local economy. And when you pick a trade fight with our third largest trading partner, really no good can come of that. If you want to make adjustments and course corrections, you do it with diplomacy and you negotiate without having to throw the hammer down. And what we saw here, and historically, we've seen that tariffs, broad-based tariffs, don't work. Sometimes you can have smaller tariffs to protect certain industries, but this is not what he's doing. A broad-based tariff with Mexico, and then he's looking to extend that to countries around the world. This isolationism is going to cost American consumers and really hit all of us in the pocketbook.
So, Wendy, if I buy a piece of, fruit from Mexico and it costs me an extra 20 cents if it costs me $1, is that worth it for building the wall?
Well, that's one of the things that the Trump administration is going to have to address, because this is exactly what Americans didn't want to see happen. Nobody wants their taxes to be raised in the name of border security. We want both, right? Americans want lower taxes, more jobs, and national security, including border security. So there's got to be a way, and Trump's a businessman. He's been doing this his entire life. He's got to be able to make a deal, as he would say, that allows Americans not to have to ourselves foot the bill for the wall, but also to see it built, and maybe eventually Mexico will pay for it. That's what that's what he's saying. Obviously, they're not going to be writing a check, but he's got to really be transparent, and I think he's trying to be as to how is this all going to work. That's what everybody wants to hear.
Speaking of how things are going to work, President speaking with Russian President Vladimir Putin tomorrow. Laura, what do you think they're going to talk about? What's the first thing on their agenda.
So I just have to go back to Wendy's points and just say that when you're talking about trade with Mexico, I'm just going to channel President Obama. Come on, man. They're not going to pay for it. We are absolutely going to pay for it. And I might extend that to the discussion of Vladimir Putin. Why, while he's alienating our allies, he was embracing someone who has opposed American interests abroad. And so we knew that this was coming because he practically endorsed Vladimir Putin over and over again on the campaign trail. Evidence suggests that he benefited from Russian largesse and incursion into the election. I mean, there's a reason why they want to be friends, but that reason is not to promote American interest and security. So I don't know what they're going to talk about, but I do know that Vladimir Putin sees Donald Trump as his pawn.
One of the things they probably talk about is the public perception of their relationship. I mean, let's face it, there's been more Saturday Night Live skits about these two men in the last 6 months alone than we can count. One of the things they probably have to be very careful about is some of the points that Laura made, is there is this public perception that it's not in America's best interest. Yet Trump says that it is, and many of his supporters do as well. So you can bet we'll be glued to the set when we get a debrief of what exactly that went on at this meeting. And we really hope that there's a lot of transparency shown in what they talk about, because this is a relationship that there's a lot of tension on both sides.
Look, they can be planning to go riding shirtless on horseback, but what I care about is, will American interests abroad be protected? Will the American people be more secure? And will our allies in Europe see Russia incurring onto their soil and their freedoms? We need to work on protecting democracy. That's something that all parties should get behind.
All Americans want that. That's a bipartisan goal. And that's why everybody's going to be waiting to see, what are they going to talk about that advances the goal that we all agree with?
Waiting to see, ladies, real quick, Supreme Court Justice pick coming Thursday. Your predictions, Wendy?
Oh, when it comes to who Trump's going to name to what post, I'm not even going to make a prediction. I mean, there was a prediction of Judge Pryor last week. Now it's a couple of other names being floated. I have no idea.
Laura?
I'm not going to name names here, but I can predict that this will possibly be the most right-wing justice we have seen appointed to the court. He has, with impunity, really worked to buttress the arch-conservative side of the court, and this will be no exception. This will be someone that is anti-choice. There will be someone that is extremely pro-business. This will be someone who likely does not believe in LGBT rights, and this will be someone who is likely to be a religious conservative.
I think it's going to be somebody more down the middle. So we'll take those two points of view, and we'll talk about it next Friday.
Because we could keep talking and talking
We do like
and
to talk.
talking. Wendy Patrick, Laura Pink, thank you, ladies.
All right, thanks, guys.
It's been 1 week.